All right, everyone, welcome to our live. Thank you for those of you who join religiously, and welcome to our newcomers. If you are listening on Facebook, give it a like. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share this with anyone who you think could really benefit. Today we are going to be talking about a very prudent topic, which is admissions and finance, which is the very first two steps after advertising and marketing. It's 2024. We have to get away from the I've always done it this way. And sometimes we have to take a step back and look at what's going on within our schools and say, you know what? I don't think that this is working anymore. So many students are being enrolled up front, but then yet still when it comes to the finance side, this is where we see a lot of students falling off. So today we're going to walk you through the admissions process, some of the pitfalls, some of the wins, which is very important. And then we are going to get into finance. We have Meratas with us. So they are going to talk through some solutions. So first off, let's start off with some intros. We have with us Mr. Darius Goldman. He is actually the founder and CEO of Meratas. So Darius, talk to us. Introduce yourself and tell us how you even got started with Meratas.
You did it. You did the introduction for me, Kathy. I'm Darius, founder CEO of Meratas. We are the student loan marketplace. And I got started in this. I was a corporate attorney. I don't come from education, which I think is actually a good thing. Sometimes you need an outsider's view. At the law firm, we were bundling student loan portfolios, and I had an inside look at the aftermath of once these loans are issued. And that was the catalyst to starting Meritas several years ago. And that's something we get into later. But it's great to be with you, Kathy.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. And then we have Mr. Bo. Bo, you know I'm not going to slaughter your last name, so go ahead.
Hey everyone, I'm Bo. I'm one of the account executives here at Meratas. Again, thanks for having us, Kathy.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Kathy Belletty. I'm the founder of Motivate with K.A.T. That is an admissions and leadership training company. I'm also the host of EdUp Career Schools, The Scoop. So for those of you who actually follow my podcast, you know my full story of how I got into higher education and why, which is very important. But in a nutshell, I have been serving in admissions going on 18 years. I think I've held almost every position in the admissions department. And one thing that I've seen, which I'm continuing to see today, is that lack of communication between the advisors and our students. We have to get to the point where we understand that every department has to work together for our students. And I'm still seeing so many advisors under so much pressure to enroll to the point where they're missing the entire point of what admissions is. So what I'm going to do, I am going to walk you guys through the admissions process. And here's why. So many times when I meet with schools, I realize that when I'm talking to different teams within the campus, the right hand has no idea what the left hand is actually going through. And that's a problem. You would be surprised how many advisors have no idea what financial aid does and vice versa. So I'm going to walk you through a day in the life of an admissions advisor so that you really understand what the team is going through before they even get to financial aid. All right. So the first thing that we have to understand, admissions is sales, period. All right. And we need to make sure that we are saying that upfront in the interview. There is a high turnover in the admissions departments for a reason. But in a lot of cases, it's because the minute that they start to get into the role, they're like, hold on for a second. You did not tell me that all of this was involved in the admissions process. There are metrics, there are expectations. Some of you guys have class starts every 5, 6, 7 weeks. Your advisors need to know that up front. And if they decide to say this is not something for me, perfect. You just dodged the bullet. So here we go. We have an advisor who makes 200 plus dials per day. Okay. One advisor. And in some schools, I've seen some who make 300 plus dials per day, especially if you're not talking to anyone. Here's what's going on within those calls. You have hangups, wrong numbers, not interested, wrong program, already enrolled in another school, no GED, no status, rude people, and they have to keep going, right? Let's say, for instance, the advisor finally gets someone on the phone. They're on the phone for 20 minutes and they're like, yes, I'm about to set this appointment for today. Call drops. Can't even get the student back on the phone. Online schools, you guys are actually interviewing on the spot. So if you pick up the phone and you get someone who's actually able to stay on the line with you, you're on the phone for about 45 minutes. Get to the end of the interview, you're about to send over that paperwork to start the enrollment process. Call drops. Nowhere to be found, not picking up the phone. In some cases, I've seen all of a sudden the numbers are disconnected. Guess what? That advisor still has to keep going. Now we're talking about an interview. So we've inspired the student to actually take the next step. They've enrolled in school. Now we get to finance. Parent is not on board. They can't get financial aid. How do you think your advisors are feeling? Because at the end of the day, they still have to keep going. This is what your advisors are actually going through. So besides this is what an admissions team has to know, period, when it comes to their role. Number one, identifying the right fit. This is what we are missing within the admissions departments. So many times when I'm listening to an advisor call or I'm sitting in an interview, guess what? You can tell when your advisors are just trying to get to the ending of the call because they're thinking, okay, I need this appointment to come in, or I need this person to enroll. And they're missing the entire student story. You have lead forms that are coming in. They have certain programs that are on there. Who cares about the program? Remember, students request information because somebody told them that it was a good idea, but they don't always take the initiative to do the research for themselves to find out if this is the perfect fit for them. But too many times we have so many students that are misplaced. And if you are stacking enrollments up front, guess what? Retention is being hit in the back because these students are going to leave anyway because they're not in the right program. They're not paired with the program that suits their personality and who they are as people, right? The second thing, effective communication. This is a problem. I see some advisors, they just have a hard time having a simple conversation with a student. These are people. The admissions process is a communication process. And sometimes we have to realize that this is a person with blood running through their veins who are on the other line, who have no idea how they're going to get to the next step in their career. And your job as advisors is to listen effectively. Read between the lines, identify those red flags and say, you know what? This is the best fit for you. And sometimes you may have to tell a student, you know what, we're not able to help you at this point in time. This may not be the best time for you. We have to get away from, well, the student requested information on this program, so I have to give them this information. No, what you need to do is listen to what the student is saying that they need. What were their circumstances in the back? Sometimes you have to be able to recommend to a student, you know what, based on what you just told me about yourself, this is the better fit. And here is why. You have to get to the point where you are understanding what your students are trying to get across to you. Follow up and stitch activity. This is missing on a lot of teams. Okay, follow up. That is the process after you've contacted a lead. Stitch is the process after the student enrolls. Here's the mistake that we're making. We're assuming that once a student enrolls, the closer they get to the class start, they're getting excited. It's rainbows and unicorns. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's not true. The closer your students are getting to the class start, the more freaked out they're getting because all of those false beliefs begin to roll back in. So now they're thinking, oh my gosh, I have so many kids. What if my babysitter backs out? Oh my goodness, I'm working part-time. Am I really going to be able to afford this? You know what? My mom was right. Maybe I should wait a couple more years before I get this started. And if you are not following up with these students afterwards, you are going to miss it. And then you're going to be wondering why you're at the front desk the first day of class looking for your student signature. They're not coming. So we have to make sure that you have a strategic follow-up process and stitch process in place. Managing class starts. Do your advisors know how to do that? I talk to so many advisors, they're like, I just enrolled. I have a goal of 40 and my goal is I just call as many students as possible. That's not a process. You have to be able to know, okay, in order to get to this many students the first day of class, there's something called gross versus net. Every student is not going to start. There's no such thing as 100%. So you need to know based on your start rate, how many students you need to enroll to land at that number the first day of class. And it goes back to the stitch activity. They have to know their metrics. They have to know their conversions. They have to know their run rates. That's super important. PDLs and conversions. Look, I used to have some advisors who built an entire class start on referrals. And you know why that was so important and how easy it was for these advisors? Because they built relationships with people. They weren't looking at students as a number that they needed to meet by the first day of class. They actually genuinely cared. They showed empathy. And these students, they can feel if you're genuine in your delivery. So guess what? If they feel that, if they sense it, that means they trust you. And now they're going to trust you with their friends and their family members. And now you just built an entire class start on referrals, and that's free. So now you just helped out your school. Okay. But the most important thing of all of this is the human side. We have to get our advisors to understand process versus prospect. Forget about the process for now. You need to focus on that student. The student is in a situation. Every student has a story, and your role as an advisor is to find out what their story is and how you can help them if it's actually possible. So we have all of this that's going on, right? Now we get to finance. And guess what? We can't even get these students funded. So now how do you think that your advisors are feeling after they've put in all of this work? They've dealt with all of this rejection. They start to get deflated. They feel defeated. They start to feel frustrated. Now they're starting to think, is this even for me? And in a lot of cases, your advisors, they take this personally. All right. So this is where Meratas comes in, because we don't want to continue to be in a spot where our advisors are putting in so much legwork up front. And then on the back end, it's like, ooh, can't get the financing. So sorry, cancel all those students, go back to your call list and keep going. So Bo, please talk to us about some of the challenges that you have been seeing within some of the schools that you've been speaking to.
100%. So I talk to hundreds of financial aid reps day in and day out. And almost everyone I talk to comes out leaving and scratching their head and wondering why they haven't heard from Sally. Traditional methods are outdated. We are sending these students away to find their own funding, whether it's the entire amount or to bridge certain funding shortfalls. Not only is the school losing insight into this entire application process, but they don't know if that student even applied or not. Did they get approved? What point are they in that application process? Nothing. What I can say is, as soon as they get that first denial, when they get through to that step of actually applying, is they get discouraged. But not only are they getting discouraged, they're actually getting embarrassed. They're getting embarrassed and don't want to come back to the school and talk to the rep again, because at the end of the day, you as a school have sent them away. You've sent them away from that funnel, and you are no longer holding their hand. This is where Meratas offers school, or allows schools to offer a one-stop shop for a complete tuition solution. This is from in-house payment plans to private student loans. This is where you don't have to send your student away anymore. This allows you to empower your team, but also empower your students with not only choice, transparency, but control as well.
I love that. One thing that you mentioned just now about the student feeling embarrassed, this is why admissions plays such a critical role after a student makes a decision to enroll in class, because a lot of times students may not understand the language when it comes to financing. And sometimes they may not want to bring it up on the spot and say, can you repeat every single thing that you just said? So now the student leaves the building and they're totally confused. And guess what? Now the advisor is trying to get in contact with them and they're not answering because they don't want to go through that embarrassment of saying, I don't really understand anything that they say. I don't want them to feel like I'm stupid or, I'm incompetent. So it's a problem. How does
We see
Meratas...
it.
Go ahead, Darius.
No, we see that all the time. People are proud. People want to do right. Like there'll always be a need and a desire for education, but you talked a lot about process and prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the advisor does their job to a T, at that crucial point when the student says, great, I want to do this. How do I afford it? The advisor says, okay, go get a loan and come back. Or the advisor says, this is the preferred lender we have. Or the advisor says, here's our list of preferred lenders. It's actually worse to say, here's our list of preferred lenders, because when you give that student that salad bowl of, here's 30 logos and ranges, and surprise, surprise, every range starts at 4 and ends at 14. So now the student's going to pick. And what we did, we studied this exhaustively. The student will pick first based on branding. Oh, I see SoFi a lot. I see the stadium. I'll apply there. The student will stop applying. A student loan application is a hard process. It's tedious because of the information that the lender wants to see from the student to issue them credit. But the student will apply once, twice, and stop after 3 applications. So it's great that you have 20 lenders on your preferred lender list. They're going to pick 3 at most, and chances are they're going to be rejected 3 out of 3 times or 2 out of 3 times. It's a ugly statistic. We're not a lender, but we work with lenders, so I see all the data. And the problem is, even if the admissions rep did everything that you asked them to do, Kathy,
Mm-hmm.
at the point of conversion, that's where they're losing the most highly qualified and intentional consumer, someone who is now completing that financial application, and they're losing them because at this critical point, the school has given up all of their control and just pointed them in a direction and hope that they come back or hope that they have the happy path. So it is a problem.
Yep. And you know what? In some cases, I've seen if a student can't get qualified for financial aid, sometimes I have heard financial aid advisors say, well, your next option is to go get a personal loan. But then it's like to a student, now they're asking, so what do I do? I just walk into a bank? Most students, our students nowadays, some of them don't even have bank accounts, right? So it's like, do I just walk into a bank, go to the front desk? Like, what am I doing? So now you have all these students that's floating out there who could get financing, but there's no direction, so
That's absolutely, that's another problem. We see a lot of students in the studies we do end up getting payday loans by mistake because payday lenders, they're the ones that advertise the heaviest. And the student doesn't know, let me go to my local credit union, which is usually a better choice. But it's a lack of awareness. So one of the things that we do in our marketplace, and again, we're not a lender, but we work with them, is we have private student loans. With a private student loan, the lender has to approve that school. The lender say, I will lend to the students of this school. So there's an approval process. But we also have personal loans. Now, the personal loans that we offer through our marketplace are great for non-degree programs, certificate training. They're also great for short-term funding gaps where your scholarship or your federal or your student loan covered X, but you have a living expense or a small balance that you need coverage for to enroll. So what we do, we don't ask the student, what do you want, a student loan or personal loan? Because again, as you said, Kathy, they don't know. They just know they need financing. So we ask the student all the required information. What do you want to study? Where do you want to go to school? And we'll match them to the lenders that work with that school. And then we'll also show them personal loan options, but we do it very clearly with a very big split screen, student loans on one side, personal loans on the other side, with all the rates and information that accompany this. Because we've learned that if you send the student to Lending Tree, the first question scares them, student loan, personal, they don't know. So student loan, but then they see their school doesn't qualify to work with any lender. They don't know to then try the other route. So rather than asking the student what they want, we get the required information from them and then just show them all of their options.
Interesting. So would this help when it comes to dependent students? This is where I see a lot of enrollments drop off because One thing advisors have to understand is just because a student is living on their own or they have kids, that doesn't automatically make them independent, right? But at the same time, you hear a lot of advisors say, you know what, the parent is not supportive. You know, when it comes to the dependent students, if you're under a certain age, if you don't have any kids or whatever, that parent may have to step in and apply for a parent plus loan. In a lot of cases, especially if the student has been flaky with the last few schools that they've attended, and they're like, this kid doesn't finish anything. I am not financing this kid's education again. Would that help in a case with a dependent student where they can actually qualify for some of these loans on their own? And then it may be able to fill in that gap for the parents who don't want to move forward and take the parent plus loans for them.
Yep, absolutely. And we do it in that same approach. Rather than asking the student what type of loan they want to qualify for, we just get the right information. So in some cases, a parent would sign as a co-signer, and there's a flow for that. And if you do have a co-signer, parent will collect that information and will show you the lenders that work with co-signer loans. But in cases where the student does not have a co-signer, they could still finish that same flow based on the questions we're asking and see the options that are available to them. A couple of truths about lending is that even with private student loans, credit does matter, and it's unfortunate, but most students, because of where they are in their learning and working life cycle, are beginning to build their credit. So the options to begin with will not be vast, but we found by having at least this marketplace where we have 20 plus lenders and 60 plus personal lenders, we've been able to match students based on their unique circumstances to the lenders that do cater to that life cycle journey.
Interesting. So, Bo, I know that in some cases, students are able to pre-qualify for some of these loans before they even choose a school, right? How does that actually work?
Yeah, so financial barriers are, always one of the number one barriers to entry. What we've found, and a benefit of running this marketplace, is that we're seeing a high trend of students that are pre-qualifying for loans even before they're admitted into a program. When we think of a home buying journey, right? We're not going to find a real estate agent before we went to the bank to get a pre-qualification. So with the influx of students pre-qualifying before actually picking a school, Meratas has actually stumbled into a new opportunity of helping our partner schools get matched with uncommitted students through our platform, which I'll have Darius speak to.
Sure, absolutely. This is one of the nice externalities of running a marketplace. We watch these trends, and the trend that we were noticing based on the questions we ask: where do you want to go to school? What are you studying? And where are you in the process? Enrolled, applying, and how many schools are you applying to versus just browsing? About 2/3 of our customers in Meratas are coming to pre-qualify for loans are either applying to multiple schools or denoting that they're just browsing, which means they have an interest in a specific career journey, but haven't even selected a school yet. But they're doing this very similar to what you see in the housing industry with pre-application for mortgages. Get pre-qualified now, decide later. So the opportunity that Meratas has, and it's something that we're beginning to build out with a few early partners, is great. You know you want to study X. You're actually taking the initiative to apply for financing to make sure that you have all the criteria required to attend this program. Have you considered these partner schools? These are the partners of Meratas that supply that coursework. And it's an opportunity now that we've found to take a student who's at the bottom of their decision funnel, ready to make a choice, and match them to schools in our network that want that student.
Okay, so let me just get this straight. Okay, so let's say, for instance, you have a student that's coming into a school. This student can now, like before the admissions team receives that lead form, you have a student who is now asking for information on this particular school, but they already have their what programs or the pricing that they would actually qualify for. So it gives the student more confidence in the end because they can say, all right, well, you know what? I already got pre-qualified for this amount and your program is X amount. So this is something that I can actually do.
Exactly. And think about it a step further. So Meritas originally, our goal was to make lenders compete for students, right? By giving the student more choice, transparency, and control over their private loan options. Think about a future where now the student says, I want to study cybersecurity, and this is the schools that I'm potentially interested in. I have a $5,000 funding gap. How cool would it be if one of our partner schools said, you have a $5,000 funding gap, you don't even need a loan, we're going to give you the 5,000 scholarship, come consider our program instead. We found that the problem with a lot of these schools is just getting brand awareness. So now, if when the student's at a point where they're ready to make a decision, the school could say, we offer that program and we know what your financial need is because you're applying through this marketplace. We could either help you bridge it with a scholarship payment plan or through the marketplace itself. But the idea of even using a scholarship is to entice a student who's going to a school that's not in our partner network to go to one of the schools in our partner network.
Interesting. Okay. So at what point in the enrollment process would this come up? Because, you know, when it comes to the admissions teams, there's but so far they can go when discussing financial aid, right? You know, back in the days, they called it the three-legged stool, right? So a financial aid, grant, student loans, payment plans, right? But in some instances, you know, due to state regulations, some advisors are not able to go into detail when it comes to how this funding works. So when you guys are onboarding schools, which departments are actually being trained in this? Is it both, or are you more focusing on the financial aid advisors?
So it's a combination of admissions, enrollment, and financial aid. We find that if you're waiting to take it from the financial aid side, it's a bit too late. So we're not a lender, which is why if a school wanted to say, you know, Meritas is a neutral site, and with Meritas you can see what your options are. It's a chance for that school to encourage the student to take this final process of getting funding, bring it to the front of their decision. And if we're partnered with the school is able to see that data as well. And now the admissions rep, seeing the same data that the lenders would see, could help guide that student better through the process. You said it yourself earlier, Kathy, you said process and the prospect. Think about what a more substantive conversation your admissions rep could have with the student if they see the same results that the lenders would see and know that that student is either pre-qualified for financing or these are the difficulties that the student might have in getting financing, which is why left hand, right hand, talk to the financial aid department about a payment plan or even a scholarship. Handling it upfront proactively rather than reactively at the end of the process.
Got it. So basically, it will really depend on the school, guys, because I know some of you have really strict, you know, regulations when it comes to what you want your advisors to actually say. So in some cases, there would be some cross training between admissions and financial aid.
Correct.
Okay. Bo, can you talk to us about what kind of schools Meritas actually works with?
Yeah, of course. We work with a number of different programs where we've seen anything from, you know, your four-year standard colleges all the way to your non-degree technical programs. We've really catered to these non-degree technical programs because a lot of what we see from them is, you know, sometimes they don't qualify for federal aid. Sometimes there's programs or certificate programs that don't have 600 clock hours. They don't qualify for that federal aid. They still need options. They're in that between land where the government almost isn't even recognizing them as a school, but they're still valid educational providers.
Absolutely. So I know a lot of people are probably thinking, okay, this is something that I've been waiting for all of my life. If I wanted to get onboarded with Meritas, where do I even begin? Like, what would that process even look like if a school was interested in getting onboarded with you?
So we have a website, meratas.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can go there and you can click the link to schedule a meeting with one of the account executives and have a meeting with myself. And then we can kind of talk about the goals of the school. And from there, we can continue the conversation on what that onboarding process looks like.
Got it. Okay. Well, here's one thing that we also have to consider, because earlier I said this is 2024. So we have to get to the point where we're thinking outside the box and we're looking for different solutions. So, Darius, in your opinion, what do you think is going to continue to happen if these schools do not make a change when it comes to the finance side?
Absolutely. I see it as a tale of two worlds. Education is a fundamental right. There's always going to be a new generation of looking to upskill and better their lives through education. The question is, are the schools prepared to adapt to these changing needs? We went through a period where money was free just a year ago. It's not anymore. Rising interest rates resulted in less loan offers. A lot of schools weren't ready for that with backup choices. A lot of schools that we saw on our platform had one lender. Oh, this is our lender. Go there. And that lender stopped lending. Schools need to see this. You said this, Kathy, yourself. It's a three-pronged approach.
Mm-hmm.
Federal, private, and then even payment plans. And while Meratas does not work in the federal space, what we do really well is assess a school's and students' private loan options, and then also have payment plan infrastructure. So through that same funnel, it's about not making that student go through 30 different applications and 30 different websites, but through the same journey, offer them private student loans, personal loans, and even school-sponsored payment plans to bridge that gap. So the schools that can adapt will still continue to see enrollment, and the schools that are just hoping, they're the ones who are going to be affected by this.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing when it comes to admissions training. Look, I have met with brand new advisors who had no idea that this much went into the admissions role. I've had advisors say, well, I thought I just had to talk to a couple of students inspired to start school. And it's like, no, you were misinformed. Okay, there's a lot of different moving pieces when it comes to admissions. But then on the flip side, there's a lot of tenured advisors out there where you would be surprised what they don't know. And the major reason for that is because back in the day, training was a punishment. If you were on a training call, your friends were like, ooh, you sucked last week. See you after lunch.
What did I do wrong?
What did I do? You know,
What
happened now is over the years, we realized that a lot of the advisors who've been in the field for so long, they were really never taught the fundamentals of effective communication because they never had to get on any of those training calls. So a lot of times now when I'm talking to advisors, you know, sometimes people call them glorified reps, right? But you had so many schools who were so lead rich that eventually you're going to hit your numbers, because if you get enough leads and you talk to enough people, somebody's going to stick. But are those the skilled advisors though, right? The skilled advisors are the ones who are able to work with absolutely nothing, you know, and they're able to take a student who is totally lost and confused and thought they had it all together and say, look, I have a great opportunity for you. See that student start, graduate, and now get into their field of choice, or I would say their field of need, right? So for 2024, it is very critical for you guys to get your admissions, some training, okay? I have a full program that takes brand new and tenured advisors through every facet of admissions. And here's the thing, I am not reinventing the wheel at all because it's not needed. All right. Even though there's so much red tape when it comes to higher education, right? But it's a different perspective. I've met with tenured advisors who have 25 years in the field, and they're like, wow, I've never even thought about it like that. But here's one thing that I'm also noticing with the admissions teams, they're not having fun anymore. I don't know if some of you guys saw a post that I had a couple days ago where I said that I worked with some of the most depressed admissions advisors in the United States. It's true. Sometimes if you don't get with your teams, you're going to miss the boat. And then all of a sudden you're going to get a one-day notice, because let's get real, no one is given 2 weeks notices nowadays, right? But what happens when your teams continue to feel as if they're losing the battle every day? They take it internally and then they start thinking to themselves, I'm way over my head. Maybe this is not for me anymore, or maybe I chose the wrong career path. And this could have been avoided. The turnover in admissions is due to a lot of different setbacks. Finance is one of the major reasons why people do not move forward. But at the same time, if we have so many people dropping out of admissions at a high rate, and then you have instructors who don't want to teach anymore because of so many different reasons, what's going to happen to our students? The student at the end of the day is who matters. It starts from the very front line. You got to make sure that you take care of your admissions teams. Once they get these students through that first process, finance, this is where everything begins too. Because let's get real, if these students are not getting finance, they're not going to school. Who has 40 grand in their bank accounts nowadays to say, you know what, I'm going to drop that on this school right now so I could get started on Monday? No one. So now it's time to start thinking outside the box. How are we going to help our students get through this process? Okay, you already know how to get in contact with Meratas. I am onboarding some schools right now for next level admissions training. Like I said, that's 1 year unlimited access. It's for every learner. So there's a bunch of presentations, skits. There is studies in there. There's so many different things. Customer service is huge, which is one thing that we don't like to talk about in higher education. Our student is a consumer, and I'm not sure why we don't understand that. Okay, but if you are interested in signing your team up for next level admissions, you can get in contact with me by kb@motivatewithkat.com. That's my email, or you can go directly to my website at lessons.motivatewithkat.com. But we have to start making some changes, people. This is the year of changes and tweaks. Darius or Bo, do you guys have any final thoughts or advice for our listeners?
Advice: listen to Kathy. Listen to Kathy. That's the advice.
Straight to the point.
Straight to the point.
All right. Once again, just give them your information one more time so that these schools know
Sure.
how to get in contact with you.
Yeah, you can reach out, meratas.com or info@Meratas. I'm also big on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, send me a DM and I'll respond right back to you.
Absolutely. And Bo, you're on LinkedIn also, right?
Yes, I am. So you can reach out to me. My first name is actually Bojan, but no one can pronounce it. So if you're looking for me on LinkedIn, it's Bojan, Bojan, and then my last name Stevanovic there. It's spelled out there. And then you can also reach me on my email, which is bojan@meratas.com.
You see, and this is exactly why I didn't pronounce your name, because I've been calling you Bojan. Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining today. I really hope that you walked away with some great information. You know how to get in contact with us. Let's make this year the best yet. Till next time. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Kathy.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kathy.